Konami's newest OCG set, Revolution Booster, it has shaped up to be a very interesting set, to say the very least. But it's only going to get even more interesting from here because Konami has just announced a brand new batch of Witchcrafter support that has been added to that very same Revolution Booster set. It's weird because Witchcrafter, when the archetype was first introduced a number of years ago, it was said to have been one of the most meta-defining decks in the format at that time. Over time, it ultimately became a bit of a rogue strategy, and it didn't really work out as much. However, with this new support, maybe Witchcrafters could potentially be meta, but we'll have to wait and see. But I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get straight into it because there is a lot of new cards to talk about. So let us kick things off with Witchcrafter Terracotta, which is a 2-star Earth spellcaster with 0 attack, 2000 defense, and both of its effects are once per turn. The first effect reads: if this card is in your hand, you can target one Witchcrafter card in your grave except this card, add it to your hand, and if you do, special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Witchcrafters. Second effect, during your main phase, you can fusion summon one Witchcrafter monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field. I mean, it's basically monster reincarnation, cyber dragon, and polymerization rolled up in one card, and you can go into any Witchcrafter fusion that they may have at your disposal, including this next fusion that we'll be revealing here in a moment, which I'm looking at its effects and it's kind of insane. But I mean, again, it's a cyber dragon, it's polymerization, it's a monster reincarnation, which can get you into your this card can ultimately help you recycle your combo pieces to go into your end board, which because that you would be locked into Witchcrafter monsters, you can't really do a whole lot, but as long as your extra deck is filled with nothing but Witchcrafters, or at least have mostly Witchcrafter monsters with a few meta staples, then you're perfectly fine. Next up is actually the aforementioned fusion, known as Witchcrafter Madame Liliana, which honestly she kind of looks like a villain that can be seen in the anime ReZero, starting life in another world. I need to watch that anime again because I haven't seen it in a minute. That anime was fucking wild. 8-star Light Spellcaster Fusion with 3800 attack, 2800 defense, and requires Witchcrafter Madame Veer plus 2 spellcasters. Let's see here. Both of its effects are once per turn. The first effect reads: if this card is fusion summoned, you can special summon up to 3 level 7 or lower Witchcrafter monsters with different attributes from each other from your hand or deck. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except fusions. Second effect reads: during your end phase, if this card is in your grave, you can reveal one spell in your hand, special summon this card in defense. I mean, it can ultimately revive itself from the grave as long as you reveal a spell in your hand You can summon out summon out 3 bodies. And the best part is that if you were to combine this archetype with the charmer archetype, you can go into the charmer fusion, and your end board could be the charmer fusion plus this, and you're off to the races from there. Like you can just go into a bunch of fusion bodies. Now, I mean, there's not much else to say. I mean, you literally get to summon 3 monsters in a single second. Enough said. Enough said. Next up we have Witchcrafter Celebration. Which is a quick play spell, and both of its effects are a hard once per turn. The first effect reads: activate one of these effects. Destroy 1 Witchcrafter monster you control and a card your opponent controls. Fusion summon a Witchcrafter monster from your action deck by shuffling spellcaster monsters from your grave and or banishment into the deck. Second effect reads: during your end phase, if this card is in your grave and you control a Witchcrafter monster, you can add this card to your hand. I mean, instantly you're gonna be running at least two copies of this card, because not only could you not only can you two for one your opponent by popping one of their best cards, but you could also, on the other side of that coin, you could fusion summon a body, and ultimately you can summon out Madame Reliona off of Celebration's effect. But its second effect, you get to add it back to your hand. It's kind of similar to Pre-Might Drill Beam. Let's see if I can find it, because I actually have a few copies of Drill Beam in my Blue Eyes deck. If I can find it. Here we are, Drill Beam. So here's my copy of Pre-Might Drill Beam. Shout outs to, I think, Bear Cave for hooking me up with this. With one of these anyway. So the effect of Drill Beam reads as follow. Reveal 1 Pre-Might card or a normal monster in your hand. Accept this card. Or if you control a normal monster or a level 5 or higher Drill Beam, higher Pre-Might monster, accept a token, you can activate this effect without revealing a card. Then target a face-up card on the field, negate the effects, and if you do, banish it. During your main phase, if you control a Pre-Might monster, you can set this card from your grave. You can only use each effect once per turn. So if Drill Beam is in your grave and you have let's say either Burial on board, then you can reset Drill Beam to your board, and then next turn you would have another form of negation. Excuse me, for your opponent's cards, which is wild. Celebration does the exact same thing, only this time, instead of setting the card, it gets added back to your hand, which just even that alone is just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. But this is essentially polymerization in the form of a quick play spell, kind of like Super Poly, but not Super Poly. If that makes sense. But I will say, as I'm putting the Blue Eyes deck back in a box, I will say, I do believe that Celebration is probably going to be one of the most terrifying cards that could ever grace any Yu-Gi-Oh deck in existence, because once your opponent activates this card, if they choose um if they choose the fusion summon and you don't have any way to stop it, you're pretty much dead on that same turn, which is kind of crazy. But it depends on what the board state looks like. Next up, we've got Witchcrafter, Walpurgis. Walpurgis, I believe is how it's pronounced. Which is obviously their field spell, and I believe this is a new field spell for them, actually, if I'm not mistaken. The first effect is a once per turn that reads, during your main phase, you can add one Witchcrafter monster from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. Second effect reads, during your turn, if you would discard a card to activate the effect of a Witchcrafter monster you control, or you can send one Witchcrafter spell trap from your deck to the grave instead, except this card. I mean, not only is this a Dark World Dealings, but it's also a Foolish Burial / Foolish Burial Goods, where you can send pretty much any monster, any spell, or any trap from your deck to your graveyard to get off its graveyard effects going, which could be anything. You could send Madavir to your grave. You could send Celebration to the grave. You can send pretty much anything to the grave and get its effects off, which is kind of crazy. Next up, we've got Witchcrafter Distortion. Which is a counter trap, and both of its effects are once per turn. The first effect reads, when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated and you control a level 5 or higher Witchcrafter monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Second effect reads, if this card is in your grave except the turn it was sent there, you can banish it, add one level 5 or higher spellcaster from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. I mean, it's Solemn Judgment, Dark World Dealings. And it's my point exactly. The Charmers can 100% abuse the holy hell out of the new Witchcrafter support because of the fact that you are going to be running quite a few level 5 or higher monsters in the deck anyway. So it's kind of crazy. So essentially, it is a mini Dark World Dealings, but instead of drawing a card and discarding a card, you're adding a card to your hand, kind of like a mini Rhoda, if you will, which is kind of crazy. So they have added as well some reprints, but I'll be getting to those a little bit later on in the video because there are still two more new cards to talk about in this video. So let's get down to it. The first one up is Witchcrafter Marka. Which is a 6-star Dark Spellcaster with 2500 attack, 0 defense, and both of its effects are once per turn. The first effect reads, you contribute this card from your hand or field, add one Witchcrafter field or continuous spell from your deck to your hand. Second effect reads, if a face-up Witchcrafter monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect while this card is in your grave, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, and if you do, tribute one opponent's monster. Enough said. I mean, this card's cracked. This card is absolutely cracked. I mean, you get to add a field spell to your hand, which is essentially terraforming. So you basically have yourself spell Rhoda, and you also have a Monster Reborn for itself but you have to banish it when it leaves the field. The number one question I've always asked is, how do you bypass the banishing effect? You use the monster as material for an Xyz summon. So essentially you only need, in my opinion, and I know that this might be a bit of a weird hot take, but in my opinion, you only need one copy of Marka. Theoretically run two copies, but if you run two, it could essentially just be a brick, and you won't be able to use both copies of effects because of the fact that it's a once per turn. So you're not. So the rule, I believe Konami is probably going to rule it as you're not allowed to use both copies of effects in the same turn. I could be wrong, but I think that might be the case. But I mean, being able to tribute off one of your opponent's monsters is kind of insane. It's a good way to break your opponent's board. So if you're going up against a deck like, let's just say Yummy Mitsurugi, and let's say, for example, your opponent has, I'll say Cupsy Yummy Way. Let's just say that, which I believe I have that card as an ultimate rare in my binder. If you were to tribute that off, I mean, is it really the end of the world for your opponent? Not exactly, because obviously the deck has ways of bringing it back, so it's not bad, but it's also not good either, just because of the fact that if you use Marka's second effect on your opponent, they can just easily just negate it or find a way to bring the monster back from the grave at full strength, which is wild. Excuse me. But that brings us to the final new card of the video, which is known as Witchcrafter Pupils. Which is an 8-star fire spellcaster fusion with 1800 attack, 2100 defense, and requires one Witchcrafter monster plus one spellcaster. Both of the effects are once per turn. The first effect reads, during the main or battle phase, which is as a quick effect. You can activate one of these effects. Add one Witchcrafter spell from your deck to your hand. Reveal one Witchcrafter normal or quick play spell in your hand. Apply that spell's activation effect. Second effect reads, during your end phase, you can return one of your banished Witchcrafter cards to the grave. So this is actually kind of funny because if you activate this card's first effect during the battle phase, you can essentially just threaten lethal, because if you have, let's say Pupils on board, and we'll say Pupils, Madame Veer, and let's say Marka on board. Let's just say that, and you've attacked into your opponent's entire board. Let's just say that. If you activate Pupils' effect to reveal Celebration in hand, and use its effect to summon out Madame Rilliona, ultimately that can threaten lethal. That can ultimately threaten lethal, and what's even more funny is that you can also run a card like, let's say Defusion, to bring the materials back to your board, and then you attack your opponent for game. That's probably one of the craziest things ever. And what's even more cool is that This acts as as a mini version of Cyframe Lord Omega, where you can return one of your banished cards to your graveyard. Um, but the big difference between Cyframe Omega and this card is that with Omega, it activates during I believe it activates during your opponent's standby phase, and this card activates during each of your end phases. So as long as Pupils is on board, you can use this card's second effect over and over and over again during your end phase, which is insane. This can ultimately as well ensure that Marcus effect becomes live every single turn. So that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. There are as well again as I mentioned there are reprints. So the reprints for the set will be as follow: Witchcrafter, Madame Veer, Hane, Idel, Schemata, Pitor, Pottery, Jenny, Golem Aruru, Vice Madam, Witchcrafter Creation, Holiday, Confusion Confession, Draping, Unveiling, Bystry, Veer Magic, Lacrima of Light, and Witchcrafter Patronus. And they've also announced that Witchcrafter Vice Madam will also come with an overframe design, which looks amazing. Absolutely amazing. So those are all of the new cards that will be in the Revolution Booster set. Honestly, I'm kind of excited to see what kind of deck we could be looking at with the new support. I'm thinking that we might see a bit of a Witchcrafter Charmer style of deck, because of the fact that Witchcrafter, they use up different attributes. I think for the extra deck, Charmers uses up different attributes as well. So I think it would make sense to see both those archetypes be combined into one strategy. But I don't know exactly how it would get built. Like, it's kind of it would be a bit interesting, but we'll have to wait and see. But with that being said, that'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more card discussions in the future, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and as always, make sure you guys are following me on all of my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.